Okay, ready to dive deep into neuroscience. We got this paper someone sent us called Decoding the Brain, from neural representations to mechanistic models.
Ah,
And wow, even the title sounds like a whole college course.
it does.
But that's why we're here, to break it down,
Yeah,
make this complex stuff understandable and actually pretty cool.
absolutely.
So basically, it's all about how our brains...
Well, it really is fascinating. This
Yeah.
paper gets into how our
Yeah.
brains take like our everyday experiences,
right.
seeing, hearing, even feeling,
Same.
and turn them into signals that our neurons can work with.
Yeah, it's like our brains are translating everything
Yeah, it's like
into
a special code, yeah?
into a special code and
Yeah.
then translating it back so we
Right.
can actually do things, have thoughts,
Fine.
feel emotions, right?
Yeah,
It's a two-way street.
it is.
This paper uses a great example of a pianist reading sheet music and
There's a
playing.
really good illustration.
Yeah.
Think about the steps involved.
Yeah.
First, you see the notes on the page.
Right.
That's the sensory input.
Uh-huh.
Your brain then encodes that visual information,
Okay.
basically figuring out what those squiggles on the paper represent.
Right. Yeah.
And then
coding time.
decoding, exactly.
Yeah.
Turning it into something meaningful, like understanding the melody or planning your finger movements
Oh, wow.
to hit the right keys.
So neural encoding is like creating the code, and then decoding is,
Figuring out what it means.
yeah, figuring out what the code means.
In a way that lets us actually do something with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the paper emphasizes how the brain isn't just passively
Right.
recording information.
Mm-hmm.
It's actively using this encode-decode system
Okay.
to interact with the world,
Wow.
to make sense of things,
Uh-huh.
and to create actions.
It's wild. It's wild.
It is.
Okay, so walk me through this decoding process a bit more. Like, when I see my friend's face, how does my brain go
Yeah.
from a bunch of light signals to recognizing who it is, no
Let-
matter the lighting or angle?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Scientists use something called
Like, what do they use?
decoding algorithms to study this process.
Okay.
It's like they're
I'm just...
trying to crack the brain's secret code
Oh, okay.
and figure out how
Yeah.
different patterns of neural activity
Right.
represent specific things in the world.
So decoding algorithms...
They're the code breakers
Yeah, they're the code breakers of neuroscience.
of neuroscience, yeah.
So what's a real-world example of how this works?
The paper highlights
Yeah.
a really cool example.
Okay.
The cricket's circle system.
Crickets what?
Circle system.
Okay.
It's a sensory system they use to detect
Uh-huh.
which way the wind is blowing.
Okay.
They could do it with just 4 neurons.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Only 4 neurons can tell which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Each neuron responds to a specific wind direction,
Mm-hmm.
and by looking at the combined activity of all 4,
Okay.
scientists can actually accurately decode which way the wind is coming from.
That's wild.
Okay.
I wouldn't even know which way to turn if the wind changed.
Right.
So is this voting idea? Is that...
Well, the concept of combining information
Right.
from multiple neurons
Yeah.
is definitely used for much more complex processing in the brain.
Right. So it's not just a cricket thing.
This population vector, as it's called,
Oh.
is just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
And to decode more complex brain activity,
Uh-huh.
scientists use a variety of other methods.
Okay, like what?
So one method is called K-nearest neighbors,
K, as in the letter K.
the letter K, yeah.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to find a match in a fingerprint database.
Okay.
This algorithm essentially does the same thing with brain activity patterns.
Mm.
It finds the most similar patterns
So it's like a matching game.
from a database to predict what the brain is representing.
Okay. Okay.
Another method uses something called Bayesian decoders.
Bayesian.
These work a bit like
Oh.
trying to guess what someone's thinking based on their facial expressions.
Yes.
But instead of faces,
Right.
Bayesian decoders use probabilities
Yeah.
to figure out the most likely event based
Yeah.
on the neural activity they're seeing.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But with all this data
Right.
from neurons, how do scientists even, like, how do they make sense of it all?
That's where machine learning is changing the game.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's like having a
Yeah, everyone's talking about machine learning.
superpowered research assistant
Okay.
that can analyze huge amounts of brain data
Right.
and find patterns
Yeah.
that humans would never be able to spot on their own.
So I've heard so much about machine learning, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it actually works.
Well, think of it as teaching computers to learn from data.
Okay.
There are two main approaches,
Mm-hmm.
data-driven
Okay.
and task-driven.
Gotcha.
Data-driven is like
Okay.
solving a giant jigsaw puzzle,
Okay.
looking for patterns
Yeah.
without knowing what the final picture is.
So it's like finding connections and relationships in the data
Exactly.
without any like preconceived notions.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there are specific tools designed for this,
Like what?
like GLMs, which stand for Generalized Linear Models.
Okay.
These are great for finding relationships between different variables in the data.
Okay.
Then there are Vine copula models,
Fine copula.
which are better at dealing with complex dependencies between variables.
Wow.
And finally, Zebra
Zebra.
is a tool specifically designed to find relationships between brain activity and behavior.
Whoa, that's a lot of acronyms.
It is.
Yeah.
So what about this other approach?
Yeah.
Task-driven one.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Task-driven learning is more like
Okay.
training a computer to do a specific job
Right.
and then seeing how its brain activity, so to speak,
Yeah.
compares to ours when we do the same task.
Interesting. So are we basically like making computer brains?
In a way, yes.
Yeah, to understand our own brains better.
Yeah.
What kind of jobs are we giving these computers?
One of the most common tools for this
Okay.
is artificial neural networks, or ANNs.
Man.
These are computer programs
Yeah.
designed to mimic
Yeah.
the structure and function of the brain,
Right.
at least in a simplified way.
Okay.
For example,
Yeah.
we can train an ANN to recognize objects in images and then compare its activity
Okay.
to brain recordings from humans or animals
Gotcha.
performing the same task.
So then we can compare and contrast.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
This helps us understand which parts of the brain are involved in visual processing and how they work together.
It's like we're reverse engineering the brain
It is.
by building our own versions.
Yeah.
But how does all of this actually help us decode the brain?
Right.
Can we really read minds with this technology?
Well, mind reading might be a bit of an exaggeration.
Okay, fair.
But we're definitely getting closer to understanding
Yeah.
how the brain represents information.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, using these methods,
Okay.
scientists have been able to reconstruct
Oh, wow.
images people have seen
Seriously.
based on their brain activity alone.
So they can actually like create a picture
To a certain extent, yes.
of what's going on in someone's mind.
Yeah.
What are the limits of this?
Yeah.
Can we reconstruct anything?
Well, it's still early days,
Okay.
and there are definitely challenges.
Yeah.
The brain processes information
Mm-hmm.
in incredibly complex ways.
Right.
And there's a lot we still don't understand. For example,
Mm-hmm.
the brain might be processing visual features
Okay.
that we're not even consciously aware of,
Right.
making it difficult to perfectly reconstruct
Gotcha.
what someone is seeing.
So it's like there's this whole hidden world of brain activity
Exact.
happening beneath the surface
Yeah.
that we're just starting to get a glimpse of.
Mm-hmm.
But this decoding stuff
Right.
isn't just about vision, right?
No, not at all.
Can we decode other things?
That's like
Decoding is being used to understand a whole symphony of brain activity.
That's a great way to put it.
In motor decoding, for
Right.
example,
Yeah.
scientists are developing brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs,
BCIs, I've heard of those.
that allow people to control devices with their thoughts.
That's pretty sci-fi.
There's a remarkable example in the paper
Oh, yeah.
of a tetraplegic individual
Okay.
who was able to control a 4-limb exoskeleton
Whoa.
just with his brain activity. That's truly remarkable.
It is.
Like, that sounds like something out of science fiction,
It does.
but it's actually happening.
It's happening, yeah.
What about language decoding?
Right.
Can scientists decode thoughts into words?
They're making incredible strides in that area, too.
Wow.
Researchers have successfully decoded full words
Oh,
and even sentences
yes.
from brain activity,
That's incredible.
which has enormous implications for
Yeah.
people who have lost their ability to speak.
So it's like a speech prosthesis,
It is, yeah.
but controlled by the brain.
Like the brain. Yeah.
That's amazing. What are the possibilities with this?
The possibilities are huge.
Could we eventually decode someone's inner monologue,
Right.
like their thoughts and feelings?
It's certainly a fascinating
Yeah.
and ethically complex area of research.
right.
While we're still a long way from decoding
Oh.
someone's entire stream of consciousness,
Okay.
the progress in language decoding.
is paving the way for more advanced and intuitive ways for people to communicate, even if they can't physically speak.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And what's even more amazing is that researchers are starting to recreate personalized synthetic voices.
Whoa. So they could actually communicate with...
Yeah, they could communicate with their own unique voice.
Wow.
Even if they've lost the ability to speak.
That's incredible. It seems like we're truly...
It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, on the verge of understanding the brain's language.
We are.
In ways we never thought possible. But what's next?
Right.
For brain decoding, where does this all lead?
The future of brain decoding is about moving from simply observing patterns to actually understanding the causes behind them.
Okay.
It's about building what we call causal models of the brain.
Causal models?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Right now,
we can see that certain patterns of brain activity are associated with certain thoughts or actions.
Right.
But we don't necessarily know if that activity is causing the thought or if it's just a side effect.
Right. Right.
Causal models aim to unravel that.
So it's like the difference between knowing that the sun rises in the east and understanding like the actual physics that makes it happen. We need to know why.
We need to know why.
Things are happening in the brain, not just that they're happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to build these causal models, we need to go beyond just statistics. We need to incorporate what we know about the biology of the brain, how neurons work, how they connect, how they're influenced by genes and the environment.
It sounds like we're like trying to build a bridge between the world of data and the world of biology.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And to build that bridge, we need to develop models that are both statistically powerful and biologically plausible.
They got to be both.
They have to be both.
Okay.
They need to be able to accurately predict brain activity, but also reflect the actual biological mechanisms at play.
This sounds incredibly challenging.
It is.
But also, like, super important.
It is. It is.
If we really want to understand how the brain works,
absolutely,
what kind of tools are scientists using?
There are a number of incredibly exciting new tools emerging.
Okay.
And we can dive deeper into those next.
Okay.
But first, let's consider what a causal model could do for us.
Okay.
Imagine we're studying decision-making.
Okay.
A traditional decoding model might tell us which brain areas are active when someone chooses between two options.
Right.
But a causal model could potentially tell us which areas are actually driving the decision.
Oh.
And maybe even how those areas interact to arrive at a choice.
So we're going from simply like reading the brain's output to understanding like the inner workings of its decision-making machinery.
That's the power of causal models.
Wow. Wow.
They allow us to ask why questions to go beyond just correlation and start to understand the true causes and consequences.
It's like we're building a whole new set of blueprints for the brain.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And these blueprints will be essential for understanding how the brain works, for developing new treatments, for neurological disorders, and for building more sophisticated brain-computer interfaces.
So this shift towards...
It's a big deal.
Yeah, towards causal models seems like a pretty big deal.
It is. It is.
Where do we even begin with something this complex?
Right.
What are some of the tools in this?
Well, one exciting new tool is called causal representation learning.
Okay.
Which focuses on extracting causal relationships directly from data.
Okay.
Even if those relationships aren't immediately obvious.
So it's like machine learning.
It is.
But with a focus on uncovering cause and effect.
Precisely. And then there are tools like neural ODs.
Neural ODs, that sounds pretty complex.
They are, but they're incredibly elegant too.
Okay.
They essentially allow us to model the brain's activity as a continuous flow rather than a series of snapshots.
So it's like the difference between watching a flip book and watching a movie.
Yeah, That's a great analogy.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful
Right.
for understanding how the brain works in real time.
Absolutely.
But how do we even begin to build models like that?
Well, that's where another set of tool comes in.
Okay.
Physics-informed neural networks, or PNNs.
Physics-informed neural networks.
These networks can actually incorporate
Okay.
our existing knowledge of physics and biology into their models.
So we're not just like throwing a bunch of data at a computer and hoping for the best. We're actually using our scientific knowledge to guide the learning process.
Exactly. It's like giving the computer a crash course.
A crash course. I like
in neuroscience.
Yeah.
So it can learn more efficiently and build more accurate and meaningful models.
This is all incredibly fascinating.
It is.
It is. But it also sounds incredibly complex.
It is.
What are some of the real world applications?
Well, we are definitely seeing some incredible breakthroughs.
Okay.
And it's a great place to pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, I'm hooked. Can't wait to hear more about how this is all coming together.
So where we left off, we were talking about those mind-blowing tools like neural ODEs and PenDNs. And you're right, they are complex.
They are.
But the real magic happens when we apply them to actual research questions.
That's what I'm eager to hear about, the
breakthroughs. Yeah.
This paper mentions a few examples, starting with visual decoding. Can scientists really create images of what people are seeing?
Yeah.
Just from brain activity?
They're getting remarkably close.
Really?
It's not quite like watching a movie of someone's thoughts yet.
Right.
But researchers have been able to reconstruct images viewed by a person based solely on their brain signals.
Wow.
For example, they've shown participants images of faces or everyday objects, recorded their brain activity, and then used decoding algorithms to reconstruct those images based on the neural data.
Wow.
The results are surprisingly accurate, capturing key features and shapes.
That's just wild to think about.
It is. It is.
But earlier you mentioned that the brain processes visual information we're not even aware of.
Right.
Doesn't that make decoding even harder?
That's one of the big challenges in visual decoding. The brain doesn't just process what we consciously see.
Right.
It extracts a lot of information that we might not even be aware of, like subtle patterns, textures, or motions in the background.
So while we can
reconstruct basic shapes and features, getting a complete and accurate picture of someone's visual experience is still a long way off.
So it's like we're looking at a blurry photograph.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, we can make out the main subject, but the details are still fuzzy.
But even with those limitations, the potential applications of visual decoding are huge.
Okay.
Imagine being able to help people who've lost their sight regain some form of vision through brain-computer interfaces.
Wow, that would be revolutionary.
Or think about the possibilities for communication, being able to express what you're seeing just by thinking.
That would be amazing.
It would.
It seems like brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, are a big part of this decoding story.
They're definitely one of the most exciting areas where decoding is making a real-world impact.
That's really cool.
And the example in the paper
that example
about the tetraplegic individual.
Yeah, about the tetraplegic individual.
Controlling a four-limb exoskeleton.
Right, controlling a four-limb exoskeleton.
Really highlights that potential.
Yeah.
It's a powerful demonstration.
It was truly inspiring.
It is.
Are there any other applications of DCIs in development?
There are so many fascinating applications in the works.
Like what?
For people with paralysis, BCIs could be used to control wheelchairs, prosthetic limbs, or even computer cursors.
Wow.
Allowing them to interact with the world in ways that were previously impossible.
That's amazing.
And for people with locked-in syndrome, who are completely paralyzed but mentally aware, BCIs could provide a way to communicate and express themselves.
Wow.
It's about restoring agency and independence to people who have lost those abilities.
That's incredibly moving.
It is.
But I imagine there are still
absolutely
a lot of challenges with BCIs, especially when it comes to something as complex as controlling movement.
For sure. One of the big challenges is developing BCIs that are reliable, accurate, and easy to use.
Right. You need all three.
You need all three.
Yeah.
We need systems
Yeah.
that can pick up clear and consistent brain signals.
Right.
Even in the midst of all the other neural activity happening in the brain.
Right. There's a lot going on up there.
There is. There is.
And we need to make them intuitive for users.
We do.
Yeah.
So they feel like an extension of their own body.
Right. Not just...
So rather than a clunky piece of technology.
Yeah, like a clunky piece of technology.
Yeah.
So it's not just about decoding the brain signals. Yeah. It's about translating those signals.
It's not the translations.
Into smooth and natural movements.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the dynamics of movement becomes crucial.
Yeah.
We need to move beyond simply decoding individual actions and start thinking about how the brain plans and executes complex sequences of movements.
Right.
Like reaching for a cup or taking a step.
Right, right.
And how do scientists approach that?
Yeah, how do they even approach that?
It sounds incredibly complex.
It does sound really complex.
One way is to use a dynamical systems perspective, which looks at how things change over time. Think about a pendulum swinging back and forth. Its movement can be described by a set of mathematical equations that capture its dynamics. We can apply the same kind of thinking to the brain. Trying to understand how neural activity unfolds over time to generate smooth and coordinated movement.
So it's like we're not just looking at the snapshots of brain activity anymore. We're trying to understand the whole movie.
The whole movie.
Of how movement unfolds.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And to do that, we need to combine decoding techniques with models of how the brain plans and controls movements.
It seems like we're starting to weave together these different threads of neuroscience, decoding dynamics, motor control.
It's all connected.
To get a more complete picture of how a brain works.
And that's the beauty of this field.
Yeah.
It's so interdisciplinary.
It really is.
We need to draw on insights from computer science, engineering, physics, and biology.
To truly understand it.
To truly understand the complexities of the brain.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about visual decoding and motor decoding.
Yeah.
What about language?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that scientists are making some really impressive progress.
Yeah, they are.
In decoding speech from brain activity.
Yeah.
Language decoding is another area where the progress is just remarkable. And the implications for people with communication disorders are profound.
They are.
Imagine being able to give someone who has lost the ability to speak a voice again.
Wow.
A voice that reflects their own unique identity.
It's truly amazing to think about.
It is.
But how does
it actually work?
Yeah, how does speech decoding actually work?
It starts with recording brain activity. While someone is listening to or speaking words.
Gotcha.
Then, using machine learning techniques, we can train algorithms to recognize patterns of neural activity that correspond to specific sounds, words, or even entire sentences.
So it's like training a computer to recognize
it's a good analogy.
Different accents or dialects.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with accent recognition, the more data we have, the more accurate our decoding algorithms become.
Makes sense.
In recent years, there have been some incredible breakthroughs in speech decoding. With researchers able to decode entire sentences with remarkable accuracy.
That's just mind-blowing.
It is. It is.
So instead of typing on a keyboard or using a communication board, someone could just think of the words they want to say.
Exactly.
And the computer could translate those thoughts into speech.
That's the goal.
Wow.
And we're getting closer every day.
It's incredible.
And what's even more exciting is that researchers are now starting to personalize these synthetic voices.
Oh, what?
So they sound more natural and reflect the individual's own vocal characteristics.
So it wouldn't just be a generic computer voice.
Right.
It would sound like...
It would sound like the person's own voice.
Wow.
Even if they can't physically speak.
That's incredible. But I imagine there are still challenges in making this technology widely accessible.
One of the big challenges is developing decoding algorithms that are robust enough to work in real-world settings.
Right.
Right now, most speech decoding research happens in controlled laboratory environments.
Right.
Where the background noise is minimal.
Yeah.
And the participant is focused on the task.
But in the real world.
But in the real world.
There's a lot more noise and distractions.
There is like background conversation.
Yeah, like background conversations.
Traffic noise, music.
Traffic noise, music.
All those things could interfere with the decoding process.
Okay, so it's got to be really robust.
It does. It does.
Oh, we need to develop algorithms?
We need to develop algorithms that can filter out that noise and accurately decode speech, even in challenging environments.
Right.
And we also need to make the technology more portable and user-friendly.
Right.
So it could be used in everyday life.
It sounds like we're still in the early stages of this technology, but the progress is definitely promising.
It really is. Yeah. And as the technology continues to improve, the possibilities are limitless. Yeah. Imagine a world where people who have lost their voice can communicate effortlessly, share their thoughts and feelings, and connect with others in meaningful ways.
That's a powerful vision.
It is. It's about breaking down barriers to communication and giving everyone a voice.
We've covered visual decoding, motor decoding, language decoding.
It seems like there's no limit.
Yeah, it seems like there's no limit
to what we can decode from the brain.
Yeah, yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that the ultimate goal is to create something called standard models of the brain.
Right. Standard models.
What are those exactly? Yeah. Standard models are like the holy grail of neuroscience.
The holy grail.
Think of them as grand unified theories.
Wow.
That explain how the brain works at all levels, from individual neurons to entire brain regions.
So it's like the standard model of particle physics. But for the brain...
Just like the standard model in physics describes the fundamental building blocks of matter and how they interact.
Right.
Standard models of the brain would capture the basic principles of how neurons communicate, how networks of neurons process information, and how those networks give rise to complex behaviors, thoughts, and emotions.
That's an incredibly ambitious goal.
It is.
But wouldn't that require
it would
a complete understanding of the brain?
Absolutely.
Which we're still a long way from.
We are. Building standard models of the brain is a monumental challenge.
Yeah, but it's a good goal to have.
It is.
Yeah.
Every new discovery, every new technique we develop brings us one step closer.
One step closer.
And the pursuit of these models is driving incredible innovation in neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
Pushing us to develop new tools, new theories, and new ways of thinking about the brain.
It's like we're trying to piece together a giant puzzle.
We are.
And every new finding adds another piece to the picture.
It's a picture, yeah.
But what would these standard models actually look like?
That's a good question.
Would it be like a set of equations?
A computer simulation?
It should be a combination of approaches.
Okay.
We'll probably have mathematical models that describe the dynamics of neural activity, computational models that simulate how networks of neurons interact, and conceptual frameworks that explain how these different levels of organization give rise to complex cognitive functions.
So it's not just about understanding the parts.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how
they work together.
Or work together as a whole.
Exactly. And that's the key
Yeah.
to unlocking the true power of the brain.
So it sounds like these standard models are still a long way off.
They are.
But the journey to get there is already leading to some amazing discoveries.
Absolutely.
What are some of the most promising avenues of research?
Well, one exciting area is exploring how neural activity is shaped by gene expression.
Gene expression.
Gene expression.
How does that tie into brain decoding?
Remember that genes are the blueprints for building and operating our bodies, including our brains.
Right.
The way those genes are expressed, which genes are turned on or off, influences the structure and function of our neurons.
Right.
So by understanding gene expression, we can get a deeper insight into the biological mechanisms.
So it's like we're going one level deeper.
Exactly.
Looking at the genetic code that's driving the neural code.
Precisely. And there are emerging models.
They can combine information about gene expression with neural activity data
right.
to create more accurate
Yeah.
and biologically plausible models
Wow.
of how neurons work.
It seems like we're starting to see a convergence of different
Oh.
fields, neuroscience, genetics, computer science, all coming together to understand the brain.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
And another area where we're seeing this convergence is in the study of how our brains represent space and movement.
Space and movement.
Researchers are studying how specialized neurons called grid cells.
Grid cells, what are those?
Help us navigate our environment.
Okay.
Grid cells are fascinating.
Yeah.
They're neurons that fire in these really specific hexagonal patterns.
Hexagonal patterns? That seems oddly specific.
It does if we move through space.
Okay.
So
they're tracking our movement.
They are. It's like our brains have an internal coordinate system.
Yeah.
And these grid cells are mapping out our location.
So they're like our internal GPS.
Within that system.
Okay.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And these patterns are thought to be crucial for our ability to navigate.
Right.
And create mental maps of our surroundings.
So they're like building a map as we go.
They are. And what's really cool.
It's really cool.
Is that researchers have been able to recreate these hexagonal firing patterns in artificial neural networks.
Serious.
Providing a powerful new tool to study.
So by studying
how would cells contribute to navigation?
Yeah, by studying these artificial models, we can learn more about the actual biological mechanisms of spatial navigation.
And these models
wow, that's really cool.
Aren't just about mimicking the brain.
Right.
They're also about pushing the boundaries of what we know. For example, they've helped us understand how the specific structure of these networks can lead to those unique hexagonal firing patterns.
Oh.
Which is something we couldn't have easily observed just by studying the brain directly.
It's like using artificial intelligence to unlock the secrets of biological intelligence.
That's exactly. Yeah. What other research areas?
Yeah, what other research areas are
helping us
move
towards those standard models of the brain?
Standard models of the brain.
There are so many exciting developments, but one that stands out is the work on modeling dynamical systems.
Dynamical systems, refresh my memory.
Refresh your memory.
On what those are again.
It's all about understanding how things change over time. Think about the weather. The stock market. Or the flow of traffic. These are all examples of dynamical systems where the state of the system is constantly evolving. And of course the brain is a prime example.
It's always changing.
With a dynamical system. It's never truly at rest. It's always changing, adapting and responding to its environment.
It's a living, breathing, constantly changing network.
It is. But how do you
model that?
Yeah, how do you even begin to model something that complex?
Traditionally, we've used differential equations to model dynamical systems. But now with machine learning, we have new tools.
Like what?
Like neural ODs.
Neural ODs.
Which are essentially neural networks that can learn and represent differential equations.
So instead of having to
painstakingly
derive those equations by hand, we can have neural networks learn them.
We can.
Directly from the data.
That's amazing.
And this opens up a whole new world of possibilities for modeling and understanding complex biological systems, including the brain. We can start to model how neural activity evolves over time. How different brain regions interact and how those interactions give rise to complex behaviors.
This is all incredibly fascinating. But I have to admit, it's a lot to take in.
It is.
What's the one key takeaway you want listeners to grasp about this quest for standard models of the brain?
I think the key takeaway is this. We're witnessing a profound shift in how we approach neuroscience. It's no longer just about studying the brain as a collection of parts. It's about understanding the brain as a complex, dynamic system. And to do that, we need to embrace new tools, new theories, and new ways of thinking.
It sounds like we're at a really exciting inflection point in neuroscience where all these different fields are converging and pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think this paper captures that excitement perfectly.
It does.
And it gives us a glimpse of the incredible progress that's being made in brain decoding.
Yeah.
And it highlights the potential of this research to transform our understanding of the brain and ultimately ourselves.
Well said. Well said.
This deep dive has been quite a journey so far.
It has. It has.
We've explored cutting-edge decoding techniques, remarkable brain-computer interfaces, and even touched on the ambitious quest for standard models of the brain.
Yeah.
But this paper hints at even more.
Oh, really?
Exciting tools and discoveries on the horizon.
There are more.
There are definitely more fascinating tools and breakthroughs to discuss, and we can delve into those in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Yeah. Let's continue this exploration. All right, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into this brain decoding stuff.
Yeah.
And this paper, I gotta say, it's a good one. It's a good one. It's really opened my eyes to how much progress is being made in understanding the brain.
Absolutely.
We've already covered so much ground from decoding images and movements to exploring that quest for those standard models of the brain.
Right.
But there are even more fascinating tools and breakthroughs to explore.
Absolutely. And one that's particularly exciting is the use of physics-informed neural networks.
Right. PNNs.
Or PNNs.
You mentioned them briefly earlier. But they deserve a closer look.
They do.
I'm all ears. What makes PNs so special?
What sets them apart?
What sets them apart from other neural networks?
Well, remember how we talked about the importance of incorporating biological knowledge into our models?
Yeah.
PNs are all about that.
Okay.
They're designed to integrate the laws of physics and the principles of biology directly into the learning process.
So instead of just like feeding the neural network raw data and letting it
figure everything out on its own.
Yeah.
We're actually giving it some guidance.
Okay.
Some constraints.
Right.
Based on what we already know about how the world works.
Like cheat codes, but for neural networks.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like giving the network a head start.
Okay.
A set of rules to follow.
Right.
And this turns out to be incredibly powerful, especially when modeling complex biological systems like the brain.
Okay, I'm starting to see why PNNs are so exciting.
Yeah.
But can you give me a concrete example
of
how they're being used?
One really cool example is using PNNs to model muscle spindles.
Muscle spindles, okay.
Which are sensory receptors in our muscles.
Okay.
That provide feedback about our body's position and movement.
So they're like little sensors that tell our brain where our limbs are in space.
Exactly. And these sensors play a crucial role in motor control, allowing us to move smoothly and coordinate our actions by incorporating biomechanical principles into PNN models.
Okay.
Researchers have been able to gain a much deeper understanding of how muscle spindles work and how they contribute to our sense of proprioception, our awareness of our body's position in space.
Wow, it seems like PNNs are like bridging the gap between the physical and biological worlds.
I love that analogy, and this bridging is essential for building those standard models of the brain that we discussed earlier.
Right.
We need to understand not just how neurons communicate, but also how those neural signals interact with the physical world, how they generate forces and movements, and how they're influenced by biomechanical constraints.
It's all starting to come together.
It is.
But you mentioned there are even more tools in this neuroscience toolkit.
There are.
What else is out there that's pushing the boundaries?
Another incredibly powerful tool is something called symbolic regression.
Symbolic regression. Okay, that sounds intriguing.
What is that exactly?
Yeah.
Imagine you have a bunch of data points.
Okay.
And you want to find an equation that describes the relationship between those points.
Okay.
Symbolic regression can do that for you automatically.
Really?
It's a type of machine learning that can discover mathematical equations that fit the data.
So instead of just like drawing a line through the data points,
right,
it can actually find...
It finds the underlying equation that governs the relationship.
That's amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And recent breakthroughs in symbolic regression have been remarkable.
Okay.
Researchers have used it to rediscover known laws of physics.
Seriously.
Like Newton's law of gravitation.
Just from the data.
Just by feeding the algorithm raw data.
Wow.
About the motion of planets.
So it's like having a machine learning algorithm that can do the work of a physicist.
Absolutely.
Or a mathematician.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
And what's really exciting... that symbolic regression is starting to be applied to neuroscience.
Oh, okay.
Imagine being able to discover
the
mathematical principles that govern how neurons communicate, how brain regions interact, or how neural activity gives rise to complex behaviors.
That's the potential.
That's a potential.
Symbolic regression.
Of symbolic regression in this field.
It's like we're giving machine learning the power.
It's a powerful idea.
To rewrite the laws of nature. To unlock this hidden.
And it highlights how
mathematical language of the brain.
The fusion of machine learning and neuroscience is opening up entirely new avenues.
Wow.
Of research and discovery.
This whole deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It has.
Exploring the frontiers of brain decoding.
Absolutely.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
From the basics of neural encoding and decoding to these cutting edge tools.
Right.
Like pin and ends and symbolic regression.
Right.
It's clear that we're witnessing a revolution in neuroscience.
We are.
Driven by this incredible power of machine learning.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly exciting time to be in this field.
It is. It is.
And as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the brain, the possibilities for improving human health, enhancing our abilities, and ultimately understanding what it means to be human, are truly limitless.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway?
The key takeaway is this.
Yeah.
The brain is an incredibly complex and fascinating organ. And we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of its mysteries.
Yeah.
But with the power of machine learning and the ingenuity of researchers around the world, we're making incredible strides in understanding how the brain works. And as we continue to delve deeper into the brain's language, we're opening up a world of possibilities that could transform our lives in profound ways.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And for anyone listening who's feeling inspired to learn more about this stuff, about brain decoding, where would you recommend they start?
There are some fantastic resources available online.
Oh, cool.
Including websites, blogs, and even open source software libraries that allow you to explore brain data and experiment with machine learning techniques yourself.
That's amazing.
It's a field that's ripe for discovery.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe someone listening to this deep dive will make the next big breakthrough in brain decoding.
I love that it's a field full of potential.
It is.
And it's exciting to think about the incredible discoveries that lie ahead.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
The pleasure was all mine.
Into the world of brain decoding.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure.